My name is Kim Romanko. I'm a member of Woodturners Anonymous, the Pittsburgh chapter. And I was asked to come here and demonstrate a couple of ornaments. Basically, one's birdhouse, the other one's a hollow sphere with the top piece and the finial, and I usually make two buttons in between. And you'll see how I do that. This is kind of a follow-up to the previous one where I was doing acorns and mushrooms. So I'll give you a little bit of a variety of what we're doing here. So first off, it's the safety. Little pieces, safety glasses, you want to protect your eyes. I'm not going to wear a dust mask just because, I don't want to sound too garbled. But and these are small pieces, if they fly apart, I'm going to be standing out of the way. So you guys in the front row, they may have a problem. But no, they're pretty easy to make. Things should go pretty smoothly. Unlike the last time I was here, but we'll give it a shot. To show you some of what we're looking at here. Birdhouses. It's basically, it could be two pieces, it could be three pieces. You have your finial, your body, and the top. You can embellish it. This one, the top it's a cedar shingle type design. And as far as the body goes, however you feel, fit. You can, if you feel like doing swirls, doing flares, you can do it. They can be very plain. You don't have to necessarily even go with a finial, or it could be just one piece. This is what I'm talking about. You can just do the body, a little finial or something on the bottom just to dress it up. I could have just simply made it round. Some people will do an egg, put a hole in it, hollow it out, and they got a birdhouse. I'm not a fan of putting little posts there. If you do a post, like most people like for birdhouses, just make sure that you drill the hole horizontal. You don't want that post to come up at an angle down off to the side. You want everything to line up. That's on you. And you can just turn a small spindle. You can use a toothpick, anything you want to make the post. The round ornaments, they can just be a plain piece of wood. If you have figured wood, that's fine. These are hollowed out, about 3/16 inch wall. If you're not into the hollowing, small forms, you don't have the tools, I work through a 1/2 inch hole. You could drill a 1/2 inch hole through it and then add the top and the finial and you're done. The only difference is it's going to be heavier. So use a light wood. You can also embellish it. This one I have, I've done some wood burning on it. So, it's whatever you feel, however challenged you feel you want to be. I add color. I do the wood burning and then I add color to it. And all of these are coated with a lacquer finish. So basically that's what I'm going to be covering tonight. So let's get started. We'll start with the birdhouse. That's the simplest one to do. Hopefully it should not take too long. The hollowing is basically just you're drilling out the center of the house and the recess for the tendon. Diameter of the house, the lid is really up to you. The body itself, you can use 1.5 inch square stock. The lid, so you just want to make sure that you've got yourself a lip there. So it could be 2 inches in diameter, it could be 3 inches in diameter. It depends on where you want to go with it, what you want to do. most of these pieces, if you're going to remount them, it's good to have a center hole there. I'll put it in the chuck, but I won't tighten it up until I bring the tailstock up and make sure that it's going to run true. And that's close enough. If it's not true, you can just true it up. You don't want it to be, you don't want a lot of wobble out of it. The recess itself, typically these birdhouses, the center hole is going to be 1 inch. I will go 1/4 of an inch larger for the recess. That gives you a 1/8 inch wall. So you want to go in about 1/2 inch. It doesn't have to be very large. You want to try to make sure that you are centered here, because even drill like this, if you start out, you have a little bump in the middle, anything, that drill's going to move a little bit. So you're not going to get a true hole. You'll get a recess. It may not be 1 1/4 inches, it may be a little bit bigger, but we'll tackle that when we get through this. Let's see. I tried this earlier. The speed's not enough. It will bog down. Okay. The thing about cherry is it will burn. Some woods will go pretty easily, others will burn for you. Cherry is one of those. Okay, so I've got the recess. I'll bring the tailstock up now. And whenever possible, keep that tailstock up there. It just helps to stabilize your piece. The bottom of the roof, and I'm just going to use this is a negative rake scraper, carbide. I'm just going to undercut it slightly. And just bring the speed up. And I'm simply rotating the bit so that it flares out. And that should be good enough. I just want the lip to come up at a little bit of an angle, give it a little bit of a radius. Depth-wise, I'm looking at about 2.5 inches, or I should say the height of the ornament of the roof. Anywhere from 2.5 to 2.25 inches. That'll give us enough room to to do the flare. And okay, now we're set. You don't want to go in all the way, but you want to give yourself some relief. And with anything, whenever you have a sharp point here, round it over. You don't want your hand to hit that, it will cut into your skin. Just give it a little bit of a round over. Okay. And what I should do is, it's always a good idea to give yourself a little bit of relief here, and I'll show you why. You can take a spindle gouge or a bowl gouge. It really doesn't matter. This might be a little bit quicker. You'll enter it in the wood and open. Open is flat, closed is 90 degrees. You'll go open and you rotate it, and then you just ride the bevel. Same thing as doing a box. This will give you a nice smooth curve. Keep the tool in close to your body and just move your body, rotating it, the tool in your hand. And now I just want to thin out the top. Give it a nice, pleasing curve. And there we are. Sanding. I'm just quick. I'm not going to spend a lot of time sanding this, but just to give you an idea of where we are. Slow the speed down. And I'm actually going with 80 grit. And if you keep the sandpaper moving, you can get a pretty acceptable finish to it, at least at this stage. We can complete the finish later. And I'll show you what we'll do there. And now I'm ready to part it off. And I'm making use of these little micro mini carbide tools a lot. Especially the pointed one. These are negative rake. And I'll put a little bit of a bevel on it. And then to part it off, I'm a proponent of sawing it off, and that's one of the reasons is it gives you a nice flat surface. I've taken the tension off of it, and you have your lid. And the problem with keeping all your tools underneath the toolbox or underneath the lathe is you lose them. You lose them pretty quickly. Now let's do the body. And I do a lot of work, and I put these. This is a record mini chuck. Works just like the big ones, and I've had very good luck with it. And hopefully I've chosen the right one. No, I haven't. Again, let's make sure we're centered. Okay. As I said, what you do is you have 1.25 inch tendon. That's 1.25 inch. I want to go with 1 inch. And what I do is I usually go 1.5 inches deep. What you can do is if the drill bit allows you, you can go with masking tape. These have a shiny surface. I will mark it 1.5 inches. What that allows me to do, and this will wear off with time, so you just have to reapply it. But it's very simple to set up your indexing, and just keep it up there, up on the top, so you can see how far in you are. Lock your tailstock, and let's slow it down a little bit. Problem is, I go much slower than this right on this lathe. It's not going to. It will stop. And let me grab the. There you go. Thank you. Put in your live center, and let's bring it up, Again, as much as you can, you want to go between centers. Now you've drilled an 1.5-inch hole through the birdhouse. You want to make sure that the body goes at least 1.5 inches. You might be going a little bit more than that, maybe 1.75 inches. And you want to make sure that when you start to go in, that you don't eat up you end up with a hole in the center. Now, if you do, that's not the end of the world. You know, I've had that happen. And then decide where you want the bottom to be. Again, you don't want to go all the way, but you do want to give yourself a little bit of relief. And I'm working with a spindle gouge here, just to round off that edge. Okay. Now here's where the measuring comes in. Take a caliper, whatever you want, set it in the hole, measure it. There you go. And just make sure that you mic the hole. I typically go just a little bit more, and the reason is give myself a little bit of a leeway, so if I have to, I can sand into it. If I want a tight fit, I can get it. If I want to usually you want a little bit of looseness there, because when you glue it. So let's do the turn the speed up, and I want to make the tendon. Okay, let's see how we did here. That's good. Now, one continuous theme that I usually you hear from me is that I will undercut everything. Like I said, I have about a 1/8 of an inch wall. This one actually looks a little bit smaller than that, but we should still be okay. And I will just undercut it. Just a little. And really the reason I do this is if you make a mistake, it's too big, and you want to do some hand sanding to bring it in, you don't want to have to sand all the way to the very tip. Now you're playing with chisels and whatever you have to get it to fit correctly. So you undercut that, and now we're ready to form the birdhouse itself. And I'll do one similar to one I had done before. I'm just going to make a nice sweeping slope. I'll start at one end, and I'll work my way about halfway down the birdhouse. And I'm simply just rotating the tool. And we'll work from the other end. Again, spindle gouge, you're usually working from the top to the bottom of the cove. And now let's work on the bottom of the house. I'm going to bring this about even with where the top is. And as I'm working my way down, I'm simply just rotating the tool. I'm simply closing it up. Now, if you want to put a finial on this, if you don't want to do anything else, you want to end it right there, just continue to round it off. If you want to put a finial on it, now what you need to do is, I usually work from a 1/4 inch hole, is to drill the hole to accept the finial. I said a 1/4 inch hole. That's, I think, usually standard. Remember, you've already drilled it out with say, essentially a brad point bit, so you have the starting point already down there. Bring your tailstock up, lock it in place, and now let's drill the hole to accept the finial. And now what we can do is we can part this off. And I'm simply taking this tool and I'm just rounding it off, rounding it over. Take out some stock and behind it to allow it to rotate. And I think I got a problem here. And let's see. 1/4 inch is smaller than I think it is. There we go. And so there you have your body and the top. Now, when I first started doing these, I read an article from AEW, and I think I read it 2 or 3 times. One thing I never found out was how big a hole they drilled and where they put it in the birdhouse. Those are 2 things that were missing. The entire article, here's how you do a birdhouse. It doesn't tell you how big the hole or the location. So what I found out was, from my trial and error, actually a little bit of guesswork, is what you could do is you're looking at a 3/8 inch hole for this size of a birdhouse, and you want to go below in the body about a 1/2 inch to the center. So you can drill it out before you part it off. Or, and there we go. You can make yourself a handy dandy jig. You just have to make sure, you can see there's a, let's see. You see that there's a point there? The center of the dowel. You want to make sure that that center is there. And what I will do is, I will chuck it up. I'll set it in the chuck. Bring up the tailstock. and make sure that it's centered. I'll tighten the chuck, bring this up, and then tighten it. This way I'm sure that it should rotate true. And you can see there's a little bit of play there. Piece of paper towel, either single thickness or double thickness, it depends on how loose it is. Put it over the end and throw it in. Okay, you don't have to drive it all the way. And now we go at 1/2 inch. Now, where do you put the hole? It's really up to you. I usually don't go into the side grain. I usually go into the face grain. And you can pick whatever face you think is best. Put in your point. It says I'm a 1/2 inch down from this lip. And then you drill your entry hole. And there we go. As far as finishing it, you have it on there, it's running true. You can go ahead and do your final sanding. So if you don't do the sanding while it's on the chuck itself, this is where you do your finishing. And now you have the body. So there's your birdhouse. The only thing you're missing is the finial. And we're not going to finish that, do the finial just yet. It's common to both of these ornaments. So what we will do is we'll turn the other one and then we'll do the finial. You can start with 1.5 inch square for the birdhouse. The body, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches, that's really up to you. It depends on one, how much flare you want on that roof. You want a little bit of an overhang. So again, it's up to your preference. Sometimes whatever stock you have laying around, you don't need a big piece. This is a good way of using up all these little scraps that we have leftovers from other projects. So now let's do the sphere. And again, they both use the same type of finial. They both have a 1/4 inch tendon, and so you do it for one, you can do it from both. Now the material I'm using here is yew. Yew can be difficult to turn. And let me just let you know how I measure this. I usually go I like anything more than 2 inches. I usually go 2 1/4 to 2 3/4. You go 3 inches and you end up with what looks like a big sphere when you compare it to a 2-inch. I use this just to measure the diameter. Now, I'll turn it on its side, and you can see that, you know, a little bit further. I'll back off a little bit. And the reason is, you're going to be turning this diameter down somewhat. So it's going to be, the sphere is not going to be quite as round as what you expect. And I think in this case, let me just turn it down just a little bit. Okay, gauge that, measure it across, and then back off 3/16 of an inch. That sets the end of your ornament. And just guesstimate where the center is. That's not that important. Now you want to drill your hole. I work from through a 1/2-inch hole. That's the end of your ornament right there. There's the bottom of my flutes. I want to back off a little bit, again, about 1/8 of an inch or so. And I want to mark the bit. That's as far down as I'm going to drill. Again, you make sure that that's facing up when you're drilling so you know where you are. Now we have our 1/2-inch hole. Put in your tailstock and bring it up. And let's and again, round this over. Okay. Now we're going to start forming the sphere. And I'm using a detailed spindle gouge for this. And you'll notice I'm going a little bit further in because you still have a little bit of a round over there. No, I'm just going to do a shear cut. Just to clean up the contour a little bit. And this is where you can sometimes get in trouble with catches, especially with a spindle gouge. Okay, there's your shape. If you don't like the shape, if you want to take anything off, you want to make it shorter, you don't take anything off at this side. You've drilled your hole, that's your reference point. You'll work with this side. You want to keep this about the same place you've measured to. You backed off a little bit before you drill your hole because that's where you got to do your hollowing. So let's just quickly clean this up a little bit. Okay, so there's your sphere. Now comes the fun part. If you're going to get catches, this is probably the most likely place to get them. Tools available. Hunter has some very nice tools. It's a 6-inch tool. It's about $100 unhandled. Very aggressive carbide. It's going to take a little bit of finesse. You'll have to get used to it. What I use for most of my ornaments, I'll use those Hunter tools for other types of closed forms. These are Penn State Industries. You get 3 tools. There's one with more of an exaggerated hook. Carbide's not as aggressive. A replacement carbide's about $5. Hunter's about 35 or about $25. Their tool's about $100 unhandled. You'll get all 3 tools for $65. All these ornaments where I've done hollowing, and I've done hundreds of them, this is what I use. And I have yet to replace the carbides in them. So it's not as aggressive. They work very well. Not the same fit and finish, or not the same expense, but they work. You know, if you're getting started, this is the way I would probably recommend going. Now the problem is they've been sold out for about a month or so, and people are having trouble getting them in. So you have to consider that. Okay, remember I drilled a hole almost. Yeah. I've got the tool rest at or just slightly below the bottom of the hole. And the reason is there is a slight slope. You're on your tool rest. You want to keep the carbide about center line of the hole. So you want to be below that. It depends a lot on the tool rest. This one, I am pretty close to being at the bottom of the hole. That's usually for a 1/2-inch hole. That's about where you want to be. Things to think about. Much more likely to get catches with this if you hit the back end or sometimes the leading edge on the material. I know normally with hollow forms you want to go from the bottom out, or I should say from the top down. 1/2-inch hole, you don't have a lot. You can't get this in there without hitting the edge. It's going to be very difficult. You're going to be working this way. You're probably going to get a catch. I start with a straight tool. I go to the bottom. Again, as I said, I'm going to about here. That's my reference point. So I go the edge of the hole to the bottom. That's where I'm going to start my hollowing, and that's where I'm going to stop it. I'm just going to go from there to the front end. And you're just going with a circular motion. And I'm just drawing the tool back. And I'm rotating the tool as I'm coming back. One thing you'll notice when you're doing this, all the heat that you're generating is inside this ball. This will get warm. Your tool will get warm to the point where it's going to feel hot to the touch. What that could do is, especially on you, it'll give you little micro cracks. Front edge, back edge. You can let it cool, you can clean it out. A vacuum cleaner to the front will work. Without one of those and with a small bit, you can just shovel it, make yourself a little tool or something just to shovel it out. But you generate a lot of dust. It's all that heat stays inside that ball. If you have green wood, that can cause you problems. But usually what it does is it just creates a wad of material that you got to dig out. You can't just suction it out. I use dry material, and that seems to work for me, that or the vacuum cleaner. But you want to try to get that material out of there because that's all holding heat. I've taken out some of the back and the middle. Let's see how we're doing here. This tool, you want to keep good control of it. I'm going in the front, and I'm just going in a rotating motion. If I start to feel anything at this edge, I'll pull out, and I'll go back in with that tool. I'm just rotating it as I go in. You want to keep that back edge from hitting the sides. And I can feel a little bit of resistance. And I'll go in and clean it up. And let's see where we are. You can make yourself measuring tool very easily. I do need one for the back end, and that's a little different design. Clothes hanger. Wrap the end. You have this going in. You set the point. At the beginning, I marked it with a marker. So however, with a marker, between the marker and this part, that's how thick I am. So it's a simple little gauge you can make. I'm at about, let's see, maybe about half an inch. About half an inch thick. So, you work your way through. You can get thinner. I usually stop at about 3/16 or so, and then you're done. So now, what do? I'm going to stop right here just to save time. What you want to do is you've only drilled the hole part way. Now you want to drill the hole the rest of the way out. So I will probably finish this one later. Like I said, there's a lot of dust in there. I prepared this one earlier. Again, you know, what the problem you have with remounting pieces is you always never get them straight. You want to take precautions just to make sure that you can, or at least as straight as possible. Oh, knob came off. Okay. And now we'll tighten it up. And let's see how we did. Okay. Now that you're done with the hollowing, now you drill the hole the rest of the way. If everything lines up okay, it should go in straight, and everything should line up the way you'd like it to. And right now I have the tool at about more than halfway over. I've almost got it closed. Okay. And now let's just kind of trim it off. And part of it is just misjudging, but now you still have to finish this part. So what you do, and you can take a piece of white oak, any kind of a hardwood. I made a little jig just to handle that, because when you part it off, you got a rough surface. No, you don't want to hand sand it. Simple little jig. It was just a piece of leftover ebony. 1/2 inch. I got a little bit of a bevel on there, and that actually goes, I think, 3/4 inch or so. But I'll stick it in the chuck. Points between the, and I'll tighten it down slightly. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure that it's registered. And there is a hole in the center that will line it up. And now I can tighten it up. Now, a half-inch hole will fit on there snugly. The problem is, that's the part you want to finish. You don't want that up near here. You want it at your point. That's going to be a little bit looser. Small pieces of paper towel. Put that on. Creates a snug fit. Bring up your tailstock and just put a little bit of pressure on it. Move your tailstock out of the way, or your tool rest. And it should be pretty much centered. If it doesn't, then your holes aren't lined up and you got some issues. And now you can finish it. You can finish the whole thing. If you haven't gone to the final grit, now's the time for you to finish it. You have any scratches, clean it up. Okay? And when you're all done, you've got your sphere. Now we want to make the buttons. At least that's what I call them. These are those little parts, top and bottom. One's half-inch diameter, the other one's not quite. And let's see, did I bring that out here? Probably not. There it is. Okay. A little piece of ebony. Same thing as before. I'd actually use this piece to make those 4 buttons over there. I've got a hole there just to get it started. Make sure that everything's lined up, drive it in a little bit, and tighten up the chuck. And now you're registered. Let's see. That's close enough. So, what I told you was that one side's going to be a little bit bigger, and that's because the tool rubs against it, does make it a little bit bigger. I usually shoot for that one first. If I overshoot, I've got the half-inch side. So, set your caliper, and let's get that done. You can either use the number of tools you can use. I usually go to a Badan for doing my tendons. You want to make it a little bit deep, about the thickness of this, which is probably a little bit. It's probably about 3/8 inch. Okay. It could be a little about even or even a little bit under, which means you angle it just a little bit, and you now have a negative rake. So let's see what we have. I'm close, and just like everything else, I'm going to undercut it, and I'm going to cut below the surface a little bit. That gives me room to sand, and it provides, you got a curved surface here. So you want it to sit on the edge, but you don't want to see, you just want a very tight line. So you want to undercut it just so it just sits on there. And let's see how we did. We're close. At this point, I'm not even going to go. I can see it's a little bit raised on the inside, so I'm just going to sand it. And there we go. I may want to undercut it just a little bit more to get it to fit. You have two options: undercut it more or flatten that a little bit. Either way, you want a nice tight bond between the two. And let's see. Okay, so you got your fit. This actually works better on this side. And so now you want to form the rest of the button. Decide how high you want to do it, how you want to put it, and you can just cut it off here. Back off the tailstock, and now we're just going to cut it off. Okay, there's one. I'm only going to do one here, but you'll do the same thing for the other. The same thing for the other side. Now you want to drill the hole. I've taken something like this, I've drilled one hole, made it a little bit deeper, cut the button off, drill the next hole, did the button. It wonders. A half inch bit or even quarter-inch bit will wonder, especially if it hits different densities. What I ended up with is a hole that was kind of off, a little cockeyed, and it wasn't concentric, wasn't centered. So you put the ornament together, next thing you know, your two pieces are going like this. It's like, okay, that's not good. Luckily, these things don't take long to make, but you really don't want that. So I'll form the buttons. This will take a ½ inch. Actually, because they cut the curves out, it'll go a little bit smaller, so it works out perfectly for this. And it's That step you don't necessarily have to take. I usually do. I've got a nice point on this. It's not going to go anywhere. There's a starting point for my drill bit on the bread point. Okay, turn it on, we drill our 1/4 inch hole. Ebony does not like to take a lot of heat. But what I do is now I'm loosening the chuck and I'm coming out a little bit on that button. If you ever try to sand anything and you have it right up against the chuck, you know you always end up with a little line going around it. This way you don't get that line. It's still lined up because I kept the bit in there. It's still lined up on your, this piece is still aligned. And so now you can do your final sanding. You don't have to worry about, you can go all the way to the end. And some of the polishing compounds you could use Triple E, you can use an automotive type finish. They all work well with ebony. It'll give you a nice mirror finish. Final step. Even if it's not real black when you buy it, when you put the polish on, it'll be black, pretty much black. Slightly eccentric, but it should line up okay. So you have one of them. I just do another one for the other side. Let's see. There you go. CW. Now comes the fun part. Same chuck. This is a piece of bacote. When you're doing your finial, make sure the grain is as straight as it can be. You know, you got all different colors, but if you look at the side grain, it's going straight. And the reason is when you get to that thin part, if you have any grain going this way, it doesn't take much for it just to break off. So I've turned it between centers. I have my center marks so I can line this up. And the same as I did before. And just make sure that you get it on point. Drive it in. And tighten up your chuck. Now the ornament, the ball ornament will take 2 pieces. You get them both out of this. You don't have to worry about that. The first one will be a 1/4 inch. I usually do the 1/4 inch piece on the outside here, and then I do what it called like a flower basket design for the top. It's very simple. Take your 1/4 inch bit, and let's take a reading on it. Okay, maybe a little bit more than that, but we will see. And again, like with everything else, you'll want to undercut it. This one is easy because I can take the button I just made, fit it over there, and it's good. Now, one problem I've had is, especially it depends on the stock. You bring that point up there, you put a little bit of tension on it, you don't want it to vibrate because you're hanging out there a bit. You can crack that right off. It's only 1/4 inch. This is an old button. You can just make yourself one, keep this part short, or you can use the one that you've just made, but put that on. That will support those fibers. Again, you don't crank it up really high, but it'll keep it from splitting. Decide about where you want the end to be. Again, you're only 3/4 inch or so. Doesn't have to be that big. Because you're going to be, when you're cutting this side, you're going to be cutting it, you could cut it into this. So you don't want to use the one you just made. Use a spare one, make yourself one. The important thing is the 1/4 inch hole. Okay, let's remove this. Take that off. And let's just do a little sanding here. Okay, we're almost there. And this is where you want to do your final sanding, because unless you have a chuck that'll accept really small piece tendons, you're going to be doing it by hand. Okay. And now let's just part it off. And let's see. Okay. I usually have a sanding block here, but all you do is you just take this, flatten the end that you've cut off. And you can just guesstimate a small hole for the eyelet. Now you want to do the finial itself. As before, bring up your tailstock. Bocote. Okay. Decide where you want to put the end piece. How far you want to make it? You want to make it long? You want to make it short and fat? You know, however you decide you want to do this. Now I have this all under compression, and you want to keep that in mind a little bit later. Now, how big of a piece do you need for a finial? If you can go anywhere up to from a 1/2 inch diameter, or a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, depends on how fine you want to make it. One thing you want to keep in mind, you have this under compression. As that part gets smaller and smaller, it's going to want to split the wood, or the wood will push down underneath. This thing will go off axis, and now you got to try and get things lined up. So you got a couple of options here. I'm not going to make this super fine. One is to back off on your tailstock. You no longer have the compression, you're going to pick up some vibration. So you can work slowly and away. You're going to get vibration. So the other alternative is just to remove your tailstock, and let's just get this finish this end piece. And this is one thing you'll want to do. You want to finish this end first. or I should say, get it into your final shape, because you can finish it unsupported like this when the whole thing is done. What you can't do is go over it with a tool very easily, because it's going to want to vibrate like crazy. Okay, it's going to need a little bit more finishing, but I think that's good enough. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Now what I did was, I presented this before. This is just a live center. Made it out of a router bearing, some high density plastic, and this housing that you can't, there's a place you can buy these. This is soft steel, that's hardened steel. Whatever taper you want, and you have to drill it out, insert your bearing, and you make a very loose live center that's not going to snap that if you go really thin. I usually just take a small square, fold it twice, put it on the end. The reason for that is so this plastic doesn't mar the end. It keeps it from marring it. So now let's do the rest of the finial. I don't have what I needed. Okay. I'm going to make a little saucer shape here. Okay, I'm going to do a captured ring. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this a little bit smaller. And we're going to round it out. We're going to round it over. I almost have this thing over 90 degrees. And I'm going to cut behind a little bit just to form the ring. And we'll do that on both sides. And we want to finish as much of this ring as we can. You do it now or you do it later, and what you have to do is you have to rotate it in your fingers, and that can take a while and your fingers will cramp up. I've been there. Dental pick. You just put a chisel end on it. You can cut it off with a snips, sharpen it a little bit. It's fine enough, it will cut. Because normal captured ring tools are just too big. They won't work. So now I'm going to go from one side. You go from one side, you go the other side. If they mismatch, now you have to do the sanding if you want to get everything lined up. If you go one side, you don't have that problem. So and you got your captured ring. It's that easy. Now we can finish the finial. Decide about how long you want it. 2.5 inches or so, usually pretty good. And now this just formed the teardrop or the carrot or whatever you want to call it. The ring has a tendency of following wherever the tool is. That's probably because of the vibration. And the end's off. So now I no longer have a captured ring. But you get the gist of what I'm doing. It's what? Well, it can. But then so can miracles. Ta-da! It's Bacote. So, no. But basically, yeah, it can be done. You just have to, you take your tool. You're almost closed, and just taking that point in to the center. Well, it just so happens, like I said, if you have a little misaligned grain, it doesn't take very much, and it hit this part, the disc. Yeah, but you can get very nice finials. I've done a lot of them out of Bacote, and if the grain decides it wants to go sideways, and you touch this part, you don't need much of a catch. It will break because you're going fine. And this is probably for finials as fine as I'll go. I did one about half this thickness. It fell about 2 inches. It was only a finial about that long. It was on a little lid. It fell off when I was finishing it. The thing broke in half. So If you go too thin and you want it to last, you want to, you give it away. They have kids. You don't want to go super fine. That's to show people, hey, look what I can do. But for heirloom, you don't want to do that. I keep them 1/8 of an inch minimum, sometimes a little bit more than that. And like I said, captured rings are not that hard. What you do is, when you do part it off, you end up with a little roughness on the back. Take a piece of sandpaper, pretty much at an angle like this, stick it along the piece underneath the ring, move the ring up on top of it, and if the sandpaper's too coarse, you may not even be able to get that over the ring over it. You have that, it's that tight of a gap. And then just turn the ring on the sandpaper to get that roughness off, or you can do that to help form it a little bit. But do your sanding ahead of time while it's on the lathe, because it's just so much easier. Okay? And this would apply for, you don't need that top part, but you do need this for either or you don't even need it for the birdhouse if you just want to make a smooth bottom, the finial. And as far as doing this part right here, I usually go in, I'll measure it. You just need to do about that much. And then again, you undercut it because you want it to fit tight on that button. And then you finish the rest of it. And with that little undercut, if you part it out, because you can't try a piece on it right away, then you just take some sandpaper, you go like this, but you don't have to worry because you got the clearance up here. You don't have to worry about that. Or you chamfer the inside of the button. There's more than one way to do it. Okay? So those are the two. And this would apply to either of them. You just don't have to do that top piece. Any questions? Thank you. I almost got through it. As soon as that piece hit, I said, okay, that's it. It's over. One more thing. When you're doing the top of the birdhouse, that's usually not that critical. Or you do this. And you do this. Under the banjo. Okay, I put that little starter hole there. You can get very small eyelets at usually they have them at Hobby Lobby in the jewelry section. Problem is when you're screwing it in, it can break off, and now you're stuck. It doesn't take much to turn these, but what you want to do is you want to start you want to do a starter hole. You can go out and you can buy yourself a drill bit. They may or may not last very long. It's hardened steel. This is an 18 gauge finishing nail. That's a little bit too big. So what you do is you'll chuck it up, take some fine sandpaper, and sand it to a diameter that will allow those eyelets to hold tight, and you'll tighten it up. Even then, sometimes you go into ebony, the heat will cause it to crack. So again, you don't want to glue the whole ornament together, only to find out that this piece cracks, or you break the end of the eyelet into this piece, and I got to try and either dig it out or offset it or do something. So is basically you keep your pyramid point, but you reduce the diameter a little bit so that you can get a good bit, a good grip. And that pyramid shape will penetrate. And basically, before I glue up any of those ornaments, I'll drill the hole, I'll put the eyelet in, and when it's in, then I feel safe. If you glue everything up and this breaks, now you have to either try to salvage it or you have to try to dig it out and then keep everything lined up. One thing you can do is 30 seconds or less in a microwave, Type 1-2 glue. It will loosen it up enough that you'll be able to just twist it and bring it out. If you have a piece painted and lacquered, you're going to have to redo the painting and the lacquering. Wood burning's not affected, but it'll be hot. You want to grab it, give it a little twist. You can pull it out and put a new one in, but I would do this first. It's just a simple insurance policy. Get this done, get the eyelet put in, and now you're ready to go. Now you can glue everything up. Okay? And the same thing for the lids or anything else. Very, very simple drill bit, and it lasts. You don't have to worry about buying them and then watching them break on you after about 2 or 3 uses.